With EU5 coming in only less than 2 months from now, I decided to create probably my biggest video on that game so far. I went through all of the features that were added to EU4 in free patches, in the full DLC and in the immersion packs. I've listed over 150 features that are in EU4 through all of these channels. Then I compared each of these features. If it is already available in EU5 base game, is it just partly available? Is it using a different mechanic, or is it not available at all? This is mainly for you to understand, okay, how much actual mechanics this game has. So it might actually help you out and decide if this game is worth buying. And if after this video you decide it is, make sure to use the link in the video description and the pinned comment, because you're gonna support my channel without paying any extra money for the pre-purchase. But yeah, I'm not forcing you to do that. You might do it, of course, over time by seeing more of the videos, but this video should be of the big help, because besides all of the features from EU4 that EU5 has, I'll also present to you the features that EU5 has that were not in EU4. How about we start with the DLCs that used to be very important and purchased by most of the players, but over time Paradox decided to make them free. How much content is there and how much of this content we can find in EU5 base game already? Keep in mind that this content is taken directly from EU4 wiki page, so probably there were more features that are not included here, and some of them are probably in EU5 as well, but these are the crucial ones. So you see, out of the 10 features introduced in the Art of War, we've got 6 features directly already in EU5. 1 feature, so selling ships, is using the other mechanic in game, and only 3 features are not available, which is sortie from the forts, objectives for war partners, and templates for army and navy. For sure, I think templates for army and navy are a must-have and should be included in the game, but it's not there yet. But you can see there's a lot of important content here, like using your subjects' casus bellis, revolution mechanics, creating small custom vassals, 30 years war mechanic, which is much more complex than EU4 because we've got actual situation about it, or even having marches, which wasn't in the base game EU4. For the Common Sense DLC, 4 out of 6 key features are in EU5 base game already. And 2, from the 2 that are not available, 1, so developing a promise, is actually a feature in EU5, but the development works very differently in EU5 and in EU4. The only thing that I'm just not sure, this is a do not answer, I'm not sure, is theocracies mechanics, because they definitely have their unique laws, they have their unique government reforms, which is, one would say, very similar to EU4 already, so probably we could even mark it as available, just with a bit different mechanics. Rights of Man was a massive DLC that is right now in the base game, so some of you newer EU4 players might not be even aware that all of these mechanics, they were not in the base game. You had to pay for them in a DLC. Out of these 11 mechanics, 10 are already in EU5. Some of them are fully available, like great powers, traits for leaders, personalities for your monarchs, military instructions for the subjects, or building buildings in the subjects, they are already there. Coptic and fetishist mechanics, they're also there. Coptic is very similar to Orthodox in EU5, so maybe it's not that deep, and fetishists are also rather straightforward, but so they were in EU4 back then, so I would say they are probably on a similar level. The only feature that is not in EU5 is the basic currency, because there's no corruption in this game. Another 11 crucial features were introduced in the first 2 DLCs for that game, Conquest of Paradise and Wealth of Nations. Can you imagine that only 1 feature from this 10 is not fully available in EU5, which is Random New World, which is a bit random feature and it's fun, but be honest guys, how often do you use this? From important features that we are having is managing your colonies and colonies mechanics. And there are, I would say, much more mechanics for the colonies than in EU4, because, for example, yeah, maybe you don't have colony types, But colonies can do federations like 13 colonies. You can actually do actual triangle trades between the colonies because you have actual trade goods and a trade flow. You can transfer trade goods from the new world to the old world and from the old world to the new world. So if you want to have potatoes in Ireland, you can replace the trade goods in Ireland with potatoes. Totally doable. But imagine that you didn't have covered diplomatic actions in the base game EU4. You couldn't do trade conflicts. You didn't have privateers. It was not there, even trade companies or canals. All of this stuff is in EU5 already. It's just worth mentioning that some of them work a bit differently. Like natives, they are societies of popes. They don't have a real country. This is like a pop-based nation, so that's very different mechanic and really interesting. Trade companies also work differently because the trade itself is very different, and so is moving your trade capital because the trade works very differently. There were almost 20 features introduced between Respublika, Eldorado and the Cossacks. From these 19 features, only 3 are not available in EU5. Of course, some of them are not fully available, like the Dutch content is just different than in EU4. You have your unique guarantee forms, you have some unique laws, etc. So it works differently. I don't really know if there are dictatorships, so that one is a do not. Trading posts are kinda there, but again the trade works differently. And there's no mana in that game, so there's not really a focus. But technically you can focus on different stuff for your cabinet members. For example, if you want to change associative value, you can use the cabinet member. You want to focus on stabilizing the country or legitimacy, you can do that for the cabinet members. And what's interesting, you also have education of your heirs when base EU5, which is not at all a feature in EU4 except for, I think, like theocracies, right? Oh yeah, the things that are worth mentioning that are in EU5 from this list is definitely Trio de Tordesillas, as it is done through a situation. So it is a bit more complex mechanic than in EU4, which is just climbing a region. Here you have a situation with additional events, battles, CTAs and decisions. Naval missions are working very well, like hunting enemy fleets, hunting privateers, increasing your maritime presence, which is not even a feature in EU4. It's really working well. And so are the estates. Because estates, when they were introduced in the Cossacks, it was basic as shit. There was almost nothing there. A few like very shitty privileges. You could get 200 mana from every few years from the decision at the estates. And I don't know if some of you remember, you had to give specific provinces to the estates. Terrible. There was not even a crownland back then. In EU5, you have a crownland split between the estates, so something that was improved by the estates a few years later. There's many more types of the estates than in that time of EU4, and I would say I didn't play enough of the game, but I would say it is comparable quantity of the estates in game to the EU4 with all of the DLCs. Maybe a few less, but there's also a massive amount of privileges. And I might risk saying that there are more privileges available in EU5 than there are in EU4, at least from what I've seen so far. Another interesting thing is, I don't think there's technically a condottieri, as a name condottieri, but you can take your stack and make it available for hire as mercenaries, which kind of works like condottieri in EU4. And I think one big feature that maybe two sad features that are not in EU5 yet from EU4 is a time-lapse. I love time lapses, you know that from my channel, and there's no custom nation designer, at least yet. I mean, you can release a custom nation, but it's not what I'm looking for. I think Mandate of Heaven was the first DLC where I actually started following European size for changes, patch notes, what's new there, what can be done. I even tried, that's an important word, tried doing some gameplay content, but back then I was just doing memes on EU4, and that was also a time when I did my first World Conquest, which is even an unpublished video on my channel. It used to be published. But yeah, from that DLC there are some interesting mechanics that we should have in mind, but in general you see out of what, it's like 7 of them, out of 7 of them, one is not available. There's no golden eras in EU5, but we've got ages. Ages were introduced in the patch number 1.21. And the DLC mandate of it. It's not in the free game. You have it in the free game. In EU5, you do also have Chinese Empire with its own situations and its own unique government and mechanics of tributaries, mandate, etc. You do have a complex shogun and daimyo situation where daimyos are not even... I mean, there's not even daimyos at the start of the game. You have clans, which are building-based countries, another type, that do have their own land, that might become daimyos and start owning some lands, and then of course unite Japan, and there's, I think, at least 2 situations in Japan that play around it. I'm not sure if there's Manchu banners as special units in EU5, but since I've seen dozens of special units, I'm more than sure there are Manchu banners in this game, but I didn't see them with my own eyes. And yes, you do have diplomatic martyr builder, not to mention there are many more diplomatic actions you can do, but I'll talk about it later. Dharma was my favorite DLC for a very long time. Because I love playing in India. And actually the next campaign I'm playing in EU5 after I finish my Ottomans campaign is as Orisa. And let me know, guys, if you want me to post an ARR of my Ottomans campaign, explaining to you what kind of mechanics are there, how did it go, how much I conquered. I think you might enjoy it. But yeah, between these 2 DLCs, it's like, what, 15 mechanics? 15 mechanics. You see that actually a few of them, more than a few of them, are not available. Like, we don't have army professionalism. There's not really a way to exploit your development. As mentioned, development works differently. I don't think you can convert provinces of a subject, but I'm not like 100% sure, never tried it. There's no like charter companies, and there's no scorn for insults. You can send a normal insult in that game. I'm also not sure about some of these mechanics, like what are the Mughals content. There was nothing to talk about it, and obviously I didn't play as any path to form Mughals, but I'm pretty sure they are formable. Trade company investments, so there's a bit different mechanics, like there are trade companies in this game, and I think there are buildings related to it, so they are kind of investments, so probably even just do it as other mechanic. And Mamluks 100% sure have their own government and mechanics, so does Persia. Tribal federations, there are more, like mentioned a bit earlier, the societies of pops with their own mechanics, and Timurids, they also have their own content and guarantee form with like legendary conqueror to conquer a lot. So that's obviously there. What are the other things that are worth mentioning from this list? Islamic schools, base game. Janissary special units. I think there's at least three types of Janissaries that you're getting as the Ottomans. Guarantee forms. Can you imagine that before Dharma there were guarantee forms, but they're like straight as like it was a game from 2000. There's a lot guarantee forms in EU5. Obviously, in EU4 it's like you have tiers of guarantee forms. In EU5 you just have a lot of guarantee forms, and through ages you unlock new slots for the guarantee forms, and also unique guarantee forms. And lots of nations have a lot of flavor with their unique guarantee forms. Emperor and Leviathan. What a dynamic duo, right? First of all, Emperor is absolute peak of EU4. Like with quantity of the players, development of EU4 multiplayer scene, and emerge of a lot of new creators. As you see, almost all of its content is in EU5, like papacy, mechanics. Obviously they are different, and I think they are better than in the base EU4, because base EU4 also had it, and they might be even better than the DLC EU4. HRE mechanics, I didn't play much in the HRE, so I can't really tell you much, but from what I've seen in the Tinto Talks and the other creators playing, this is pretty good system. Revolution, again in EU5 they are done through a situation where revolution hurts a lot compared to EU4, and it's good that it hurts. Hussite is a fave in EU5, and it also has its own situation. In general, as you might hear already, a lot of stuff that you had through like events or even mission trees in EU4 they are moved as a flavor to the situations, which actually makes the stuff more dynamic, because in situations you have buttons and decisions you can click, which is not so linear like the mission trees. You've got the events related to it. I'm over time getting convinced that is a pretty good replacement of the mission trees, but I know a lot of you will not agree on that. Hegemonies are in the base game. I don't think that's Defender of Faith. Counter formation is there, and I don't think you can provoke rebellions. Leviathan. Leviathan is a funny story, because on one hand it's a huge failure, right, with the amount of the bugs and negative opinions, but be honest guys, didn't you like exploiting some of these bugs when it was released? We all did, right? A few thousand development provinces for concentrating development. But if you look at the Leviathan long term, with the features that it brought, look, these are features that are actually being used a lot to this day. Using favors and getting stuff in exchange for these favors. It is being base game EU5, guys. Regencies, yeah, it's not so important. Monuments, such a crucial feature in the game. So obviously the monuments are in EU5, but they are done as just as special buildings. And that's another thing. The quantity of buildings, and especially unique buildings EU5 has, is freaking massive. I think there's like few hundred buildings in that game. Carpet Siege, do you even remember that there's such a mechanic in EU4? It doesn't work. In EU5, it works, and it works flawlessly. It's such a good mechanic to Carpet Siege, and I'll do you one better. Military objectives, which handle different of this kind of stuff. Besides Carpet Siege, you have also what's called a Focus Siege. Because if you Carpet Siege, your stacks are not gonna care if there's enemy or not around. And some of them will get wiped by bigger enemies. Right? So Carpet Siege is great if you kill enemy armies and you know it's clear. So if you're afraid of the enemy armies, you can use Focus Siege to just not split the stacks into small ones, just keep sieging the forts around the areas or provinces that you choose. The mechanics that are not in the base EU5 from Leviathan, they're not so crucial, like specialist colonial nations. I told you there are different colonial mechanics that it has. Concentrate dev, obviously it's not there because there's no such a mechanic to be used. Expand infrastructure, same, and centralized state, same. Honestly, centralized state and expand infrastructure, and there are some like weird mechanics when you look at it long term. And yeah, it helps play you tall, but in most of the campaigns and by most of the players, it's not really used. The last two full expansions that were released by EU4 team, and we'll get to the immersion packs next, was Domination and Winds of Change. And these two didn't really bring any new mechanics, right? That was the focus on the EU4 team at the end. Bring flavor for the nations, not really new mechanics to not make the game too complex. So because of that, it's really hard to compare these games, but definitely for the special needs, as told, there are a lot of them. And for the content for the countries, there are mission trees in EU5, right? But these mission trees are like more generic goals around either expansion, diplomacy, or economy. Some goals that are dynamic. And in that game, the mission trees are replaced by a lot of events, and I mean a lot. I'll show you the numbers on these nations, and situations, especially situations. So let's take a look. What is the actual quantity of the content in EU5 for each of these nations? Start with the Ottomans. Ottomans in EU5 have 190 dynamic historical events. Plus, on top of that, they have 44 unique flavor, meaning current reforms, advances, and laws. How it looks like compared to EU5 after domination, just like what, 2 years ago or 3 years ago? In domination, if you count just the normal dynamic historical events it has, it's a bit over 100, like 105 or so. Even if you add all of the events from the mission trees. I know most of the mission trees end up with clicking a button and getting an event out of that, right? It's still 154. So you can see what I have in mind. 190 dynamic historical events and 44 unique flavor for the Ottomans in EU5. That's how big is the amount of the content for the Ottomans before even any future DLCs. base game. U1, so we probably don't count content for smaller Chinese tax and Ming. I'm not just sure, but just U1 in EU5 has 93 events and 31 unique content. In EU4, Ming has 60-ish events. Yeah. After so many DLCs and patches. Ashikaga, just Ashikaga, has 55 dynamic historical events in EU5. Moscow has 108 and another many when you form Russia. Castile, just Castile, has 178 dynamic historical events. France has 205, while England has 233. All in the base game. Obviously, we're here talking only about big nations, and that's one worry. That I have to be clear with you. One worry that I have about EU5 is that for this unique dynamic historical events and unique flavor, a lot of smaller size countries, they don't have any. Not just a few. But you have to keep in mind that they will have a lot of content for having their own religion, type of the government, like being a pop-based country or building-based country, the culture, region that they're playing in, and sometimes also situations that are related to the religion, region, and the other stuff. Obviously, then we have immersion packs, and some of them also this brings some new content, like orthodox mechanics being more complex, metropolitans, which is just a different mechanic in EU5. Co-op being there in the general Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution in EU5 is an actual institution that is there, that is also unlocking a lot of new advances, or even knowledge sharing was introduced in Britannia. The only two mechanics that are not fully in EU5 are naval doctrines and innovativeness. I mean, we might argue that it's a bit different mechanic in EU5, the innovativeness, because you have the literacy of your people, that's kind of innovativeness that all of stuff impacts, and how fast you research technologies, right? Research speed. So I would probably could even argue that it's partly available as a different mechanic. You see 4 other DLCs that are smaller packs. So Golden Century, Origins, Lions of the North, and King of Kings. They're mostly focused on just new flavor for the nations. This Golden Century did bring some new content, like minority expulsion. So simply when you colonize in EU5, you send actual people to colonize. So you can kinda do a minority expulsion, but I'm maybe not 100% sure about that. I think it is possible for a different mechanic. There's no Holy Orders. I don't know if there are Pirate Republics. I would assume yes, but I didn't play as one. There are no flagships for sure, and there's no naval barrage in the game, but your navy can support your armies that are, you know, next to the sea tile with food access. So this way, because, you know, if you're far away from a country, your army might run out of food, so that navy might actually support them with it. You might be shocked, but Paradox is not only about paid features. They did introduce plenty of mechanics through the lifetime of EU4, and I just want to also show you how many of these actual mechanics were already in day 0 in EU5. Rivals are there, power projection is there, works a bit differently. Coptic, Ibadi, and Sikh religions are there, and they have their own mechanics. They were not even in EU4 before that 1.6 patch. Admin efficiency is there, but of course it is also working differently. In EU4 it's mainly how fast you expand. In EU5 it impacts a lot of stuff, like how fast you change your laws and guarantee forms, or even how efficient your cabinet members are. Imagine that there's no local autonomy before 1.8. In EU5 there's no local autonomy, but you have a different mechanic that works about this, which is control of a province, which is, you might say, a reversed autonomy, because the higher control you have, the better. Plenty of disasters and situations in EU5, I think more than EU4, or maybe comparable. All of these regions are in EU5 as well. The subjects do have liberty desire. Tank Zoroastrian are also there. Buddhists is split into multiple religions, and there are more of them than in EU4, even after all of the patches, not only 1.12. I don't know if many of you remember, but before patch 1.12, forts worked differently, meaning that every province was a fort. It was easier to siege, yes, but every province was a fort in EU4. It can be right now as well, but you need to build a building, right? That's also worth mentioning that the fort system in EU5 is, I would say, the next phase of what's in EU4 after all of the changes. Meaning that there's so many more locations. So sieging some of the forts or some capital of the provinces will siege down all of the locations in that province or all of the locations in that fort zone of the control that are not bordering the other forts. Very similar system to Imperator Rome. Again, development is there. It was turned into a free feature in 1.12 before it was paid. No revanchism? Okay, there is a feature that is not there. Do you imagine? Before 1.12 there was no logo of the battle incoming on the actual map. Yeah, it of course is in EU5. I see generally a lot of features that were introduced later in the game are here, like sailors. Ships used to not use any sailors before, spy network and general espionage stuff. Of course, state territory system, there's just a different system in EU5 where you have integrated provinces, not integrated provinces, and you have cores. Yes, there is humiliate rival CP in that game. There are institutions and more of them than in EU4. You can accept cultures and it's a really interesting system. Because in EU, it's an improvement, because in EU4 you just have a list of the cultures you can accept, right? Like 3 cultures you can accept, no matter if they have 10,000 development or 50 development. In EU5, you can first of all tolerate a culture, so it's less rebellious and it costs cultural capacity, a little tiny part of it, or you can accept a culture, so it costs more of your cultural capacity, much more than tolerating. And the more pops you have of this culture in your country, the more cultural capacity it takes. So it's actually weighted. All of this stuff. Devastation, yes. Ages, yes. Absolutism, yes. Works differently, but it's there. There's even court and country disaster in that game. Automatic fleet transport, it is there. I don't enjoy it, to be honest, but it is there. You can declare bankruptcy. Yes, all of the monarchs, heirs and advisors, cabinet members and general characters in game do have their own culture, religion and their own skills as well, right? Diplomatic, admin and military skills. Missions are already mentioned. E-states up until 1.26 patch, which was when, like 2019, 2018. Up until that patch, E-states were gated by the DLC. You have it in the very base game in EU5 and it's really a complex system. Okay. This will be all of the features that we have to discuss today that were in EU4. So let's just give it a quick summary. Because if you take a look just at all of the features that used to be or are paid features in EU4, we've listed 124 of them. You see, over half of these paid features are in base game EU5 already. 18 of them are partly available, which means pretty much that the mechanic is simplified. Other mechanics is used for 12 features, and only 24 out of these 124 features are not at all available. If we also combine it with the features that were added to the base EU4 game over time, the numbers are getting even more interesting. Because you see, we've got 95 out of 157 features that are in base EU5, and only 28 out of these 157 are not available at all. But this is not the all, guys, because we are not only counting the amount of the features from EU4 that this game has, because it's not only about copy and pasting. That I know some of you would like it. Why don't you just take EU4, add more provinces and improve graphics and just make it EU5? Wouldn't you just stay in EU4? Don't you want to learn a new game with new mechanics? And yes, I've listed plenty of bigger and smaller features that EU5 has that were not in EU4. I'm sure this is not all of them. That's the ones that I'm aware of. 32 of them. Let's go and see how useful they are. I'm obviously not gonna discuss all of them. You are probably well aware of some of them based on some of the videos I did in the past or reading Tinto Talks, but I have to highlight some. Dynamic markets and general rework of the trade system is a massive change, and I think for the advantage. Some of you I remember were complaining that this game is going too much towards Victoria style, but these changes are not really making it this Victoria style. Yes, you can focus more of your economy, but it is not killing the standard conquest gameplay that you had in the previous EU games. This is obviously combined with the more dynamic trade goods system that are having truly their dynamic prices based on the demand of supply. You do have pops instead of just plain development you had in EU4. I think the most massive change by far is introduction of the situations and international organizations, where situations, as told you, they are partly replacing the mission trees to handle specific stuff like 100 Years' War, Rise of the Ottomans, Red Turban Rebellion, or even Italian Wars. International organizations, they take care of the features that you know from EU4, like personal unions, and there are many types of them, and the personal union system through this international organization is much more deep with many policies that are combined for these unions, but it also adds many more stuff that were not in EU4, like an actual Tatar yoke system. In EU4 you were just paying a tribute, here you have nations that are in the actual system. I did mention the control and proximity system a bit, but it's working very nicely because, you know, in EU4 it was really easy to control your autonomy if you knew what to do. Here the control will be very much dependent how far away it is from your capital. Is it your core province? And then you can still impact it in a lot of ways, through buildings, roads, advances, policies, and even societal values. Societal values themselves, it is a thing that is coming back from the previous EU games that are not EU4, where you can decide if you're centralized, decentralized, are you going offensive, defensive. That will be over long term giving you specific bonuses and maluses at the same time. Cabinet is also a massive change compared to the EU4 advisors system, because EU4 advisors were just giving you mana and some minor bonus. In EU5, huge part of your administration of the country is through the cabinet. Like integrating a culture, integrating a province, changing a religion in the provinces, increasing stability more than just through money. Many actions are done strictly through the cabinet, and all of your characters, which are also a new thing in EU5, all of the characters, they have their own skills that are also impacting how fast or how good you're doing these changes. There's over 400 of buildings in that game. You have new types of countries, like a pop-based country that will be, for example, natives. There are army-based countries like the hordes. There are building-based countries like goddamn banks, the banking families. There were some minor automations like for your army and navy in EU4. They are really complex in EU5, which I already explained partially in this video. The disease system is actually present not only to handle the Black Death, but all the types of the diseases that you can have over time. I don't think I also mentioned it here, but there are also natural disasters in game, like an earthquake. If your army is just placed in the wrong location, it might kill most of your army. Advances system, I'll be honest, I was not a big fan of it when I first saw it in the Tinto Talks, because it seemed so complex and there are hundreds of advances in games, so it might seem that it's hard to learn, but personally, by playing this game for 200 hours, I'm really taking a grasp of how it works, where I should focus, and you guys will also quickly learn it. And this gives you so much more flexibility than the technology system in EU4. Works of art, and the artist presents actual defensive leaks that we already knew from the Imperator Rome. And you see, most of the stuff that I place at the end, they are rather smaller features, but I still wanted to mention them. Roads are pretty good, or even food system is pretty good. But keep in mind, as mentioned, I could probably see around 20 features I just either forgot or I'm not aware of because I didn't discover this game yet. And I think this is a very good proof also of my point of this whole video, is that feature-wise, on how many mechanics you have in that game, this game is in an amazing state and ready to be played. Yes, it will have issues early on with balance, because of the quantity of mechanics, and yes, some of the mechanics might not work perfectly because of that, but this will be fixed in the free patches over time, and even if some of the features are not working great yet, I'm having fun playing it. Another point, for any of you complaining that this game will be bare bones and Paradox is just replicating to rip us of money long term, it doesn't seem like mechanic-wise. Even the flavor-wise, major nations and sub-major nations, they have plenty of content, and in general there's plenty of things to do as any nation in game. My only worry is smaller nations. Yeah, I told you there's not really that much flavor that they are having it just unique for themselves, not for their religion, not for their culture, but just for themselves. That is something that will be improved over time, and I think that might be even a good strategy if they do it this way, because the thing is, let's say there's a DLC about East Asia, right? Japan, China plus Indonesia. Let's say that they plan this DLC in 2 years from now. If you don't plan to play in this region, you don't have to buy this DLC, and if they don't add any very unique mechanics for the whole world for this DLC, you can just skip it. And that's a much better policy that I expect from Paradox compared to like early days of EU4 where you had to buy every single DLC to actually play the game. Imagine buying a DLC to have estates in Europa Universalis, right? That's a good improvement. And I think that's also how we should approach the 3 minor DLCs, flavor packs, I think, that they already announced for 2026. Is because they're so minor and there's so much for specific countries, you don't have to care about this. They're not forcing you to buy the DLCs to play the game and have mechanics. But yeah, this is all for my opinion on this. Let me know what you think yourself. Is the quantity of the features that I just showed you, is it what you expected? Are you still not impressed? Feel free to leave an opinion on the chat, just maybe don't be toxic. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to this channel to get notified about my EU5 content. And yeah, I should maybe record my ARR from the Ottomans campaign, as I've played goddamn 500 years in it.